somewhere north of Gladstone last night. A farmer walked out to check his paddocks at midnight and couldn't find the fence line. It was already underwater, and the rain was still falling. That's not a forecast number on a weather map. That's someone's property, someone's livelihood. And this morning it's sitting under 300 millimetres of overnight rain, with more on the way. G'day. It's Saturday the 7th of March, and if you live anywhere between Cairns and Sydney, what I'm about to share with you matters for your weekend, your family, and possibly your home. I want to take you through this weather event the way I'd explain it to a mate, sitting across the table. No jargon, no unnecessary alarm, just the honest picture of what's coming and what it means for you. But before the forecast, I need to show you one image that tells the whole story better than any weather model can. Fingerboard Road, near Miriam, just south of Gladstone. 24 hours ago, that road was passable. You could see the bitumen, the white lines, the floodway marker in the middle, ordinary. This morning, every single one of those things has vanished under a sheet of brown water. And here's the thing that happened on day one. The heaviest rain of this entire event is still sitting offshore, still loading up, still waiting to arrive. Sunday is when it lands. So let me start with the only number most of you actually came here for: how much rain is heading your way, and when. I'll do this city by city, quick and clean, right now. If you're in Rockhampton, Yeppoon, or anywhere along the Capricornia Coast, the forecast is pointing at 150 to 250 millimetres across this event, with isolated spots potentially hitting 300 millimetres when a second low pressure system rolls through Monday night. Bundaberg and Hervey Bay, 200 to 300 millimetres, is genuinely on the table. The airport tarmac in Bundaberg was already underwater this morning. You're in the thick of it, and there's still 2 full days to go. Sunshine Coast and Hinterland expect up to 150 to 200 millimetres. Heavier the further north you go. If you're in Noosa, Cooroy, or up in the Gympie hinterland, you're in a particularly exposed position this weekend. Brisbane, northern suburbs, Caboolture, North Lakes, Samford, the Dargalar range, we're now looking at over 100 millimetres as a likely outcome. That call has significantly more confidence behind it this morning than it did yesterday. Brisbane CBD and inner suburbs somewhere between 80 and 100 millimetres for the event. Southern suburbs and Gold Coast, you're in the 40 to 60 millimetre zone, still enough to cause local flash flooding in low spots, but you're not in the worst of it. Sydney around 50 millimetres for the event, but watch for localised zones around Wollongong, Gosford and the Hunter, where convergence could produce 100 to 150 millimetres in a very short window tomorrow. Those pockets can catch people completely off guard. That's your number. Now let me tell you why, because understanding the why is what helps you make the right call about your weekend, your plans and your safety. Picture 3 separate weather systems across Queensland right now, all slowly drifting toward each other like pool balls after a break, not quite colliding, but interacting in a way that concentrates everything into one spot. The first one, tropical low 29U, has been sitting over northwest Queensland near the Flinders River for the past 48 hours, quietly dumping rain into catchments that were already soaked from weeks of above-average rainfall. The second one is a surface trough running all the way down the Queensland coastline. Think of it as a channel that keeps funneling warm, wet air off the Coral Sea directly onto the coast, hour after hour, day after day. The third one, and this is the one that changed everything overnight, is a subtropical low developing offshore from southeast Queensland. It's been quietly strengthening while most people slept, and it's now the dominant player in this forecast. These 3 systems aren't going to merge into one big cyclone or anything like that. They'll stay roughly 500 kilometres apart, but their interaction creates something forecasters call a moisture funnel, and it's aimed directly at southeast Queensland. for the past 3 days. The big unknown has been whether that surface trough slides far enough south to pull Brisbane into the heavy rainfall zone. 3 days ago, I had Brisbane's chances at 25%. Yesterday morning, 40%. This morning, after the overnight model runs came in, and the ECMWF, the GFS, and Australia's own Access model all started telling the same story, I'm moving that probability to 75%. Brisbane. You're now firmly in this forecast. Now I want to pause for a second and say something honestly. Because I think it matters, this has been one of the hardest forecasts I've had to communicate in a long time, and I want you to understand why. When a trough shifts its position by even 50 kilometres between model runs, the rainfall difference for a specific suburb can go from 20 millimetres to 150 millimetres. That's not forecaster incompetence, that's the genuine complexity of the atmosphere. What's different this morning is that model agreement, the moment when multiple independent models start pointing to the same answer, has reached a level I'm now comfortable standing behind. The uncertainty hasn't disappeared, but it's narrowed significantly. And here's something that's not getting enough attention. The ground across central Queensland is already completely saturated after weeks of above-average rainfall. The soil can't absorb any more. Every drop that falls from here goes straight to runoff. When you add saturated ground to 200 or 300 millimetres of new rainfall, the flooding response is almost immediate and disproportionately severe. Rivers rise faster. Streets go under faster. People have less time to react. That's the part that worries me most. Baffle Creek near Miriam was already touching the road surface this morning. A gap that existed between the waterline and the road just 24 hours ago has completely disappeared overnight. And that creek is going to receive more rain today, tonight, and tomorrow. Up in the Northern Territory, a completely separate flood event has the Katherine River running at 18 metres, that's major flood level. Up from 17 metres yesterday. It's a genuine wet season up there, and the top end is absolutely earning it this year. Let me now walk you through the timeline hour by hour, because knowing when the rain arrives at your front door is just as important as knowing how much is coming, especially if you need to make decisions about travel, work, or evacuation. Right now. Saturday morning, the rain is concentrated across central and northern Queensland. Mackay, Gladstone, Agnes Water. Bundaberg are all copping it this afternoon. The intensity picks up further inland toward Toowoomba and Roma. Tonight. Saturday night, this is when southeast Queensland starts to feel it. Heavy falls begin pushing into western Brisbane as that offshore subtropical low asserts itself. If you've been watching the radar, you'll see the activity creeping south through the evening. Sunday morning rain arrives in earnest across the Brisbane area. The convergence of those three systems really kicks into gear overnight Saturday into Sunday. And by morning, the northern suburbs are already picking up significant falls. Sunday afternoon into Sunday evening, this is the peak window for Brisbane, the Sunshine Coast, and the Fraser Coast. Plan your Sunday accordingly. If there are things you need to do outdoors, do them Saturday. Sunday is an inside day. Sunday night, the first low pressure system moves offshore relatively quickly. The rainfall for Brisbane begins to ease, but the backside of the system can still produce heavy showers. So don't assume it's over just because the worst has passed. Monday through Monday night. And this is where the Capricornia Coast community genuinely needs to brace. That second, more powerful low-pressure system makes its move Monday night, and the rainfall and wind associated with it will be concentrated and intense. That second system produces an isolated 3 to 6 hour window of very heavy rainfall and damaging wind gusts to areas south and east of its centre, Rockhampton, Yeppoon, Emu Park, and surrounds are looking at the full brunt of that on Monday night. Tuesday morning, the second low moves offshore into the Pacific, and conditions finally begin to genuinely improve. Tuesday morning is your first realistic window of clearing skies across most of the affected region. 3 days is a long time to be under a weather event like this. Let me now take a step back and look at the national picture, because what's happening in Queensland sits inside a much bigger active weather pattern across the whole of northern Australia. And a few other areas deserve a mention. Across Australia's north, there are multiple tropical lows embedded within a broad area of low pressure, and each one is tapping into a moisture-rich tropical air mass that's fueling widespread showers and thunderstorms from the Kimberley to Cape York. The tropical low that had been sitting over the Northern Territory has migrated east, and the system from the Coral Sea has drifted inland together. They've consolidated into a broader low now sitting over northwest Queensland, and it may intensify further through the weekend. There's also a separate low pressure system near the Kimberley coastline in Western Australia that's expected to intensify today, and tonight it remains offshore for now. But it's one that WA residents should keep a close eye on heading into next week. Out in the Indian Ocean, tropical low 30U is still churning away. It looks a bit disorganised this morning due to wind shear. But tropical cyclone status today genuinely can't be ruled out, and Western Australia should monitor this system through to around March 20th. Tropical low 31U is meandering around the top end and expected to track into the Gulf of Carpentaria. Longer range development into a named cyclone isn't off the table. But that's still speculative, and we'll watch it as it unfolds. Far north Queensland needs a special mention. The Daintree and Bloomfield river catchments have already seen significant rainfall causing rapidly rising rivers, with emergency warnings issued for several communities. That situation is not over, and more rain is coming this weekend. If you're in Daintree, Wujal, or Bloomfield right now, please stay in close contact with your local SES. Do not attempt to cross any waterway that has water over the road or bridge, and follow any official direction you receive immediately. Please don't wait. The Kimberley, Northern Territory, Gulf Country, and Cape York Peninsula, another day of heavy showers and thunderstorms for all of you, with storm cells capable of intense rainfall bursts, lightning, and wind gusts over 60 kilometres per hour near the strongest cells. For the Queensland and northern New South Wales coastline further south, scattered showers and isolated thunderstorms today, and from Brisbane through to the Gold Coast and down to Coffs Harbour. Daytime heating and coastal moisture will combine to fire up some afternoon storms. Areas like Glenwood and Gympie. You're looking like direct candidates for severe thunderstorm development this afternoon. I won't pretend I can tell you exactly which street gets the worst of it at this range, but serious cells are developing in your region, so stay across the radar. Let's do a quick scan of temperatures around the country, because there's a really striking contrast happening right now between what the north and east are experiencing versus the south and west. Western Australia is sweltering under a west coast trough Perth, reaching around 35 degrees this afternoon. Exmouth, about 33, Margaret River, a more manageable 30. Inland WA is pushing high 30s to low 40s in many spots. Southern Australia is in a completely different world today. A high pressure system sitting south of the continent is keeping Adelaide at 23, Melbourne at 22, Hobart at 17, and Launceston at around 21. Lovely, settled Saturday, down south. Across New South Wales and the ACT Canberra, 25 Wagga Wagga, a warm 31 Sydney, sitting at a pleasant 26 on the coast. Tamworth and Muswellbrook around 32. Warm but tempered by the cloud and moisture building along the coast. And Brisbane aiming for 28 today. But that humidity is going to make it feel considerably stickier than that. By tonight, you'll feel the atmosphere changing as the rain approaches. Charleville out west is looking at a hot 37. Now let me talk about flood risk specifically, because this is the part of every weather event where I want to make sure everyone's on the same page. regardless of how much rain is forecast for your area. Flash flooding risk is high across all low-lying areas from the Sunshine Coast north to Rockhampton when saturated ground meets 100 plus millimetres in a short window. Water has nowhere to go but along streets, into drains, across car parks and through front doors. Riverine flooding reaching moderate levels is genuinely possible for the Burnett, Mary and Fitzroy River catchments if you live on a floodplain anywhere along these rivers. Please don't wait until Sunday morning to check whether your property is at risk. Check now. There are currently flood warnings active for the Thompson River, Cooper Creek, the Georgina River, and the Diamantina, and severe weather warnings remain in place across Cape York, Gulf Country, and the North Tropical Coast for heavy rainfall. In the Northern Territory, heavy rainfall warnings are also active across the Daly and Arnhem regions, and there are multiple marine wind warnings in effect along several coastal regions. Please check the Bureau of Meteorology website for the specific warning affecting your area. For the Wivenhoe Dam catchment, current forecasts suggest around 100 to 125 millimetres of inflow rainfall that's significant. But at this point, I'm not seeing a scenario that leads to dam release operations for the Brisbane River. I'll update that assessment if the forecast shifts. And for anyone in Gold Coast southern suburbs or Ipswich who's thinking this doesn't sound too bad for us, 40 to 60 millimetres on ground that's already saturated is still enough to flood a low-lying street or fill a stormwater system beyond capacity. Stay aware. Now, the part of every forecast that I genuinely enjoy the most hearing from you, because your local knowledge, your eyes on the ground, your reports from your street and your creek and your paddock are things no weather model in the world can replicate. If you're watching from Bundaberg or Hervey Bay, right now, what are you seeing outside your window? Has flooding already started in your area? Drop it in the comments. Because local reports from the ground are invaluable when I'm putting together the afternoon update. If you're watching from the Sunshine Coast or the northern suburbs of Brisbane and you're starting to see the radar light up, same thing. Share what you're seeing, your suburb, what the sky looks like, whether the drains are backing up, every bit helps. And if you're out West Roma, Toowoomba, Charleville, Longreach, and you're watching this wondering how much of this rain is actually going to reach you, I want to hear from you too. Let me know where you are, and I'll make sure I address your area specifically in this afternoon's update. I also know that for some of you watching this, rain isn't a threat, it's desperately needed. There are parts of inland Queensland and New South Wales that have been dry for a long time, and a good fall would genuinely change things for farmers, for communities, for livestock. I see you too, over in New South Wales. Tomorrow is the day I'm watching most closely along the coast, and onshore convergence is setting up around Sydney. And whether that produces significant rainfall around Wollongong to the south or up through the Hunter to the north is still genuinely uncertain. What I can say with more confidence is that localised convergence zones in those areas can produce 100 to 150 millimetres in a very compressed time frame. And that kind of rainfall in a tight geographic area is a flash flooding recipe, especially in suburban coastal catchments. Sydney proper is looking at around 50 millimetres a properly wet Sunday, with rain ramping up tonight, and I'd be keeping a close eye on any cars parked near coastal creeks, especially in areas like Narrabeen, Manly, and other flood-prone northern beaches locations. The broader picture across eastern Australia this weekend is one of the most active and complex weather setups we've seen so far this season. Queensland is the main event. But New South Wales is very much a supporting act with its own localised risks worth taking seriously. Let me bring this all together now with a final summary, because I know some of you are watching this while deciding whether to move the car to higher ground, whether to cancel the camping trip, or whether to call Mum and check she's got her emergency kit sorted. The next 72 hours in 3 sentences Saturday. Rain pushes south through Queensland with heavy falls along the central coast tonight. It reaches Brisbane's western suburbs. Sunday is the peak day for Brisbane, Sunshine Coast, and Fraser Coast planned to be indoors. Monday night. A second and more powerful system makes landfall on the Capricornia Coast Rockhampton, and surrounds take the brunt. Tuesday morning. Conditions finally begin to ease. Total rainfall Capricornia Coast and Bundaberg region, potentially 200 to 300 millimetres. Sunshine Coast up to 200 millimetres. Brisbane, north 100 plus millimetres. 3 things I'm asking everyone to do before they close this video. Number 1, if you haven't already. Check your property's flood risk right now on the Bureau of Meteorology website or your local council's flood mapping tool. Takes 2 minutes and could change a decision you make this weekend. Number 2, tell someone. Share this video or even just text a family member or neighbour who might not have seen the forecast. The people most likely to be caught off guard by this event are the ones who weren't watching the weather this weekend. Be the person who tells them. Number 3, and I say this every single time because it saves lives every single time, never drive through floodwater. Not to check if it's shallow, not because you've done it before, not even if it looks passable. 2/3 of Australia's flood fatalities happen in vehicles. The road is not worth it. If you're in a genuinely flood-prone area, make your preparations now while the sun is still up and conditions are still calm. Move valuables off the floor. Find your emergency kit, charge your phone, and make sure you know the number for your local SES 132500. I'll be back this afternoon with a detailed update specifically on southeast Queensland. By then we'll have a much sharper picture of exactly where Sunday's heaviest falls are going to concentrate across Brisbane and the Sunshine Coast, and I'll be able to give more specific suburb-level guidance. This weather community genuinely means a lot to me. Every comment, every ground report, every share of a forecast to someone who needed to see it. That's what makes this worth doing. Thank you for being here, and thank you for looking out for each other. Stay dry if you can, stay safe if you can't, and look after your neighbours, especially the elderly, anyone living alone, and anyone near a river or a creek who might need a hand making preparations today. We'll see you on the other side of this one. Cheers.